I read some interview, and there was Voivod. They were a curator of Roadburn, and they could ask anyone to join. Did they ask Amebix to play?
They did, very specifically, you know.
Yeah, but you guys couldn't. Why?
At that time,
turning down Roadburn. Well,
yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah, Walter.
Yeah, and it was because Amebix was starting to disintegrate again at that point.
That moment on.
Yeah. So I had to be quite straightforward with him and say, it's a great honour, but we can't do it. And we were asked by Neurosis on another occasion too.
Yeah, but they were curator as well.
That's right.
And then this integration process was also going on.
That's right.
It was a long disintegration process then.
With Away, you mean with Voivod?
No. What I understand from you is that Amebix was asked twice.
Yes.
Once with Neurosis, by Neurosis, and once by Voivod.
And both times we had to say no. Yeah.
Because Amebix was
starting to fall apart at that point.
Okay, but this was a long process then. It was falling apart.
Yes, it was a couple of years, I guess. So.
Okay, so it's difficult to part with your brother, I guess.
Then. Yeah. So that's history.
Yeah, and is he playing in bands or
he's doing his own thing just now?
Music-wise or otherwise?
Yeah, he's produced some solo work. With some of it, I really like what he's doing, and I briefly chatted with him the other day online, and it appears that he's written quite a lot of material with a view to working with other musicians. I believe he did some work with Sourvein at one point.
Yeah.
So I guess he's got a lot of other things going on. But he and I don't really see us working as Amebix. You know, I think we've kind of done that, gone as far with that as we could. And for me, Towcross has been that kind of logical extension of going into my own kind of space and finding out what that's about, and then bringing in other people to create something unique, really, something a bit different.
Yeah, because the first album, what I read is it's more almost an Amebix album with a little bit of Towcross flavor, and I listened to the second album and I thought, well, that's more a Towcross album.
Yes, if the sound is already established, which it is.
Because that's your trademark sound. I guess. That is what you bring with you. That's the similarity between the first and second album, but I think it's more diverse. Is that a good term for
probably
it?
Because we've got John and Andy have been very active in writing on this one. So once we finished the first album, we kind of had this. We were keeping a Dropbox for ideas, and all of a sudden they just kept on filling it up. So it's like shit. All this stuff was accumulating. We had like a mountain of new songs.
Could you keep up with ideas?
Not really. No, because they bring. I'd have to try and get the space away from work and sit down and try and figure out a lyric, a way to do it, and all the rest of it for this stuff. So before we knew it, we had like 14 songs in a folder, and what do you do? We hadn't made any plans. We didn't think we were going to be doing another album so quickly, but it's like it was obvious. It presented itself. So we ended up doing it in the same manner, using the same very basic DIY kind of punk rock method that we'd done first of all, which was use what's available to you, and it doesn't cost a lot of money, which is you can go into a studio, get the drums down, bring those as the base for the template for the whole thing, and then start writing the individual parts or recording them in our own houses or homes or whatever. And putting that one together, drawing it into the Dropbox again, and then having James, who's our keyboard player, and he produced and mixed and engineered all this kind of stuff.
Put it all together into a listenable piece.
So it's odd because it's something that worked for the first album. It's worked with this one too, but I think we really need to start thinking about getting in the studio, doing a proper
Because that's will give a different result, you guess.
It'll allow us to go a lot deeper into this, because even working with John and Andy on stage, John's like a complete live wire, and you know that if you got in a studio with him, he's just going to start getting right into it, and there'll be other patterns going on, whereas we have very clearly defined areas when you do this distance recording, and we don't have a way to. We've had Skype conversations and this kind of stuff, but with Away, he is often away on the road, so he's doing a lot of stuff with Voivod. He might not pick up mail for a week or something at a time, so we can't have a conversation about this part, that part. It's just you do your thing.
You have to wait then until he returns,
and then you bring it all into the centre. But if we can sit in a room together for a fair amount of time, then I think wonderful things are going to happen from that. You know?
Is that a real option? You are in 3 countries?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to persuade the boys to come to Sky as the recording studio, because James has got a place which is ideal. And we spent the last week, just before this tour, rehearsing on Sky. And because it's so beautiful and a really good place to be, they're all going, yeah. Where we are is very wild and in nature, you know, there's mountains and sea, and it's a very inspiring landscape. And particularly with something like Tower Cross, a lot of the motivation for me is lyrical and it's imagery, and it's to do with connected with nature and to do with ideas which have a natural landscape about
That was already the case with Amebix?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You've always lived in that kind of area. I know that you not always lived in Skye, but where you lived before was also in nature, not in a big city.
Yeah, when we started out, we lived in South Devon, just on the edge of Dartmoor. So assimilated all that kind of stuff as well as a kid, and I've always had this very natural connection with nature and a feeling for it and stuff, and I like the feeling of place and the depth and the stuff of the earth, you know. So that tends to come through lyrically with me. I'm pretty much connected where I am.
But how is that on tour? Because in tour, when you're on tour, the venues are not in remote places. They are in big, awful cities, in urban jungles.
Well, the first show we played the other day was Puntala Rock, which is up in Finland. And,
that sounds remote.
Yeah, it is remote. So it's in a forest with a big lake on the side, and it's full of punks and metalheads. Okay. There's about 2,000 there camping, and it's fucking wild. It's brilliant. But these guys were going, I understand why you have difficulties with this, because I've just taken them from this absolute calm and serenity of this little Scottish island and put them into the middle of 2,000 drunk Finnish punk rockers, and it's like wild. So you need to do a quick adjustment, you know.
Okay, but you were able to do that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because, the other venues in Stockholm, that are big cities. Do you feel comfortable over there? Because because it's the opposite from where you live.
Well, that's fine. I guess. I mean, I grew up around that kind of thing. Obviously, when we moved to Bristol with Amebix and things, it was much more city environment, squatting and being homeless and all this for about 4 years or so, something like that. So it was a pretty tough life we led back then. So it's one of those things that you realise if you get through that period in your life and you survive and you're okay, and people don't survive, then you say, well, it's okay. You can always sleep in a field, or you can or on the street or whatever if you have to. You don't want to at my age, but you could.
You've been there. You've done that.
Yeah, done it. Yeah.
Okay, and so where you live in Skye, that's a keeper. I mean, you stay there, or you have wishes to go?
There's nowhere I want to be. You can bury me there, really. Hopefully not too soon. But
you're young.
Yeah, relatively. I built a house there with my wife about 10 years ago. So we built a wooden house, and we cleared a bit of land and made that, and we're just on the edge of the sea in front of the mountains, and it's absolutely idyllic.
Yeah,
it is lovely, but it's that thing. It's the northwest coast of Scotland, so wild winters.
Cold. Wooden house.
The house is warm enough. We don't really suffer from cold so much there as extreme wind and rain, and it's like horizontal rain and really heavy hurricane force winds and stuff. Yeah, so it's wild in the winter. You go slightly mad. Hey, hey, hey! Oh, oh!
You told that Andy and John did more writing work for the second album.
Yep.
How is that to delegate? Is that an English word?
Delegate. Well, I don't think we don't really have anybody in control of that.
But the first
process.
album you was, because it was your material that you wrote for Amebix and that you used for Taucross.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So I already had that stuff there, and in a sense, passed it over to these guys pretty much already in the form it was. Because unfortunately, for Away, because I didn't realise it's a cardinal sin. You never give a drummer tracks that have got a drum track on them. You know? And I did.
Yeah.
I was playing with these loops and putting them onto there, and he's okay. So he's kind of stuck with the original idea. Is difficult to get out of the head. Yeah.
He couldn't bring his own piece.
I think. Well, he always did, but I think with this particular album, he's set himself in the middle of it, and he's managed to command that area and be the driving force behind the rest of the music.
Okay, but for the guitar players, they also had more freedom then, because the ideas weren't that outlined as with the first album.
Yeah, John was writing a lot, and surprisingly, the variety of what he's writing as well. Things like RFID and Pillar of Fire, Big House.
Yeah, RFID is completely opposite as Pillar of Fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a real punchy punk rock sort of thing. Yeah, and then he wrote all these keyboard stuff and all the rest of it for what was it? Not the Big House. 7 Wheels. Yeah, 7 Wheels. So he was bringing these ideas across, which I think it was great for both John and Andy, because it kind of allowed them just to go into any areas they wanted to and bring things into the mix.
You gave them complete freedom.
Of course, because there's no real overarching narrative. I think what makes this band what it is an actual alchemical formula of the people that are involved, and it's one of those perfect things that's come together. The right people for the right music, and there's no restrictions there at all. It's just do what you do, and that will turn out to be automatically what the band is. So it's fine.
But without the chemistry of a band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's a digital chemistry.
Okay.
So you want to prevent that by putting everybody
in the same room. Yeah, that's quite right.
You mentioned 2 songs, Pillar of Fire and Big House.
Yeah.
What I noticed, on the first album, I didn't know the first album that much when I saw you guys at Roadburn, and then you started Hangman's Hill. I thought, oh, what's this for a voice coming from?
Oh yeah.
A completely different voice. And there was, I believe, one other song on the first album where you used that voice.
Yep.
And on the second album, I hear that voice. I don't know how to describe it other way. Hear it return more often, and I even hear a third voice.
Yeah.
Forgive me if I use other singer's name, because I don't know if there's a term for the type of singing that you do, but you have the Jess Coleman thing, perhaps Jess stole it from you, and you have this. I don't know any singer who does what you do with Hangman's Hill.
Mm-hmm. You know what I was trying to do with that I was trying to get into Ian Curtis from Joy Division.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, Ian Curtis.
So it's like that. It's in there. You know.
Now you say it. Okay.
Dance to the radio.
Yeah.
You know.
Because I call it the third voice that reminds me of Pete Murphy of Bauhaus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a completely other voice. I was wondering. Okay, you get the ideas of John and Andy. And what made you decide what voice you use?
Because I'm really sincere about this need to do as much as you possibly can. Because I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician. I'm not an eloquent person musically. I don't have any musical education. So when I started a band, it was just doing what you could with these strings and making a noise. So I've always been restricted in my whole approach, and this is kind of a way of saying I wonder what I can do. So I'm trying to reach out into different areas and see how they feel. So it's like I'm finding my own voice very much with this, and for me that's what's making it exciting, because I want to be able to cover a lot of different ground. And have different textures. It's all about these textures.
But more grounds than you did on the first album.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, but what was what caused the difference then? That you did this on the second album and didn't do that on the first album, or didn't do it that much?
So much. Well, I think probably it was realizing that it's okay, and that it was fine.
Because you got a good response from the first album, and you know that is the good direction.
But also, people were saying, as you say, with Hangman's Hill, I saw quite a few things that come up straight away. It's like, who's the guy singing on Hangman's Hill?
I read that.
It did make me laugh.
Of course. Well, I read that first, that interview where somebody asked that, and then I heard Pillar of Fire, and I thought, well, it must be him again.
Yeah.
Yes, this trick of inventing a new voice. Are there any more voices?
I hope so. I hope there's some other things in there. But as I say,
in your head for a third album.
There's already ideas, so yeah.
There are no limits.
No, that's.
Did you have those limits with Amebix and on the first album? Because it looks like a tour of freedom almost.
With the Amebix album, you mean?
Yeah,
or the first Tau Cross.
No. With Amebix, I listened to some Amebix stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not into the punk, sorry about that. So I wasn't that familiar with Amebix, but I did a quick listen.
Yeah.
And I every time I heard the overdrive voice.
Yeah.
And with the first album of Tau Cross, I heard this Ian Curtis voice, and now with the second album, I hear Pete Murphy, Ian Curtis, and the overdrive.
We had some
voice.
songs.
So that looks like you were feeling more free to experiment.
Confident of. Yeah, exactly. I guess that's what it is, because the Amebix didn't limit things so much, but there's kind of a certain responsibility of that as well. And with audience, this, but then again, I mean, saying that, there's Sonic Mass and that song Days that opens that's just a clean voice all the way through, Okay. So yeah, that was an instance of that, and I think that's probably where I started to think, okay, let's branch into this a bit more.
Night falls, these walls are leaking memories again. Open the vein, the blood of ages flooding out.
But when the first Amebix album came out, that was the last Amebix album. The first Amebix album, we were always the odd band. We were always the outsiders. People didn't accept our music at all when we first started. We had
the punk scene didn't accept you.
No, we had difficulties because the punks thought we were too heavy metal. And the metal kids didn't like us because we didn't do guitar solos or have any technical proficiency.
Oh my God, I thought that punk was about freedom to express yourself.
Well,
but they have very strict limitations because you didn't fit in, their format.
Punk started to become derailed almost immediately because my fondest memories of music growing up were listening to John Peel, the Radio 1 guy. Yeah, you probably got it here as well, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I have some CDs from John Peel Sessions.
Yeah, the Peel Sessions. I mean, he did everybody, basically. So
back in the 80s.
Yeah, so we'd sit there listening for the new music, and you couldn't identify anything clearly as it was this or it was that. There was, I mean, you think about bands like the Damned, the Stranglers, Susie and the Banshees, the Buzzcocks, stuff like that. All of these bands were very distinctly different to one another, and they all were just going into their own territory without any restrictions that were sitting on top of that. And for me, that made the whole thing exciting and creative. It made a real important point in history that everything was up for grabs. And in a sense, with Tailcross, I want to get back into that idea of you create your own music. You don't get restricted by genre or what people expect you to do and all the rest of it. No. Yeah, just express yourself. If the most important thing is you need to mean it. I think if you play something, and particularly with me, I've got a very lyrical perspective, so I get into the headset and try to communicate that thing. And live, again, it works well like that. So
it works on Roadburn.
That's because
that's a festival that's pretty open-minded. It used to be just stoner rock, but what you guys play isn't stoner rock in the original sense of the word. Mm-hmm. But you were allowed to play there, and the people accepted it.
That's been the response along all of this tour as well so far. It's been quite odd, but really exciting, because it's kind of it is like Amebix in that. I'll give you a story. Back in the 80s, I remember you would always be writing handwritten letters to people, that were into the band and stuff. So it would always be about that note before anything, So I'd be conversing with these guys across the Atlantic in the States. And I remember getting this one letter from this guy. He said, me and my brother fight all the time. He's into heavy metal and I'm into punk. He said, all the time we're at it, shouting at each other and fighting and falling out. He said, but the one thing we agreed about was when Amebix happened. And this has happened all the way along this tour. We're getting a big family of people from all over. And it's not just punks and metalheads, but it's also people that are into music. So you can see that people are actually sitting there and they're listening. And they're getting an experience out of it. And for me, that's the whole payback, is that thing.
You convinced a stoner guy like me, because I'm also a Killing Joke fan. So
yeah,
there was there's a slight link, of course. You mentioned it as an influence as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
So that was when I listen. Well, every time I go to Roadburn, there's a shitload of bands, and then I go to Spotify or whatever and listen. Is this interesting enough? And then I listen and what the fuck is this? It was different.
Yeah.
It was different than the music I know, and it's not only stoner rock that I know.
I find it quite difficult to be objective about this as a band, because to me all it is it's the natural music that I would play.
Always did.
Yeah. And people are saying it's very different and it's odd and it's its own thing. And what I look forward to in the future is if somebody says this band sounds like Tailcross or something like that. If you become the reference point, because people already do that with Amebix, of course, and Killing Joke and Motorhead, because they establish their own thing. And that's I don't think there's any greater honour than that, to be able to make your own mountain.
Tailcross, it's 5 members. Six now. Yeah. 6 now. Mm-hmm. Amebix was 3. I played in bands as well, and I know the more people, the more opinions, the more possible conflicts.
Yeah.
So isn't that a risk? Because you were used to 3 people for ages with Amebix, and now you're starting almost a big band.
Yeah, I mean, it would be if we had difficulties, but we don't seem to so far, you know. I'd say the only person that's really has opinions would be James, because he's the guy that got stuck with all of the recordings. So he'd have everything brought to him, and he'd have to make sense of it and try and put it together and give it the context and give it the production and make it work as an album. So he has his input is about how everything sounds. So he might not be satisfied with this or that and all the rest of it. For all the rest of us, we're just having a journey, and we're not. So far, there's been no difficulties. It's like having a group of good friends. Maybe it's the fact that we don't travel all the time. You know, 4 weeks in the year of being together and hanging out. It's great, really good fun.
Yeah,
so
like
genuinely, you know,
it's a vacation, kind of vacation, almost.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem for you to deal with more people in this case.
No, it seems to be working just fine, and like everybody.
Could it expand?
No. Oh God, I can't imagine that. No.
Because if I heard it right, on the new album, I heard some acoustic instruments, kind of violin or a traditional Scottish instrument.
We brought in bagpipes. On one, and we brought in hurdy-gurdy on 2 songs as well.
That was hurdy-gurdy. That was the violin, like this was hurdy-gurdy.
Yeah. So have you heard of Panopticon, which is a black metal project by this guy called Austin Lunn? He's very talented individual, but he's also a brewer. He trained in brewing over in Norway and then returned to the States and started up this kind of like Viking Longhouse brewery outside Minneapolis, and the beer is spectacular. So anyway, he invited the band over there when we were rehearsing in Minneapolis, and we all had tasted his beers, so we're completely wasted by the end of the evening. And then his friend Tanner brought out this hurdy-gurdy. Obviously it's a medieval instrument, which is turned by hand and then squeeze and all the rest of the keys.
Dead Cadence used it.
Okay. Of course, Dead Cadence. Yeah. But what a brilliant sound.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things you hear that and you go, shit, I've got to find a way to use that.
Yeah.
So
you don't see a hurdy-gurdy used on stage.
I couldn't see that, no, unless you have to be really affluent for that. It's like, you have a hurdy-gurdy song that can come on for one, you know. It'd be great, but that's the sort of thing which would make sense in something like Roadburn, where you can put together like one event with a few musicians and bring something in which is very special for one performance, I think.
That you would like to do something.
I'd love to do that. Yeah. I'd love to do that. And the interesting thing about the songs that we're playing tonight is using 3 songs from this album, because for us, we didn't have any experience of how they're going to be live, and they're kicking ass. Really, really songs? Good. Yeah, just the 3. Yeah.
But you play an hour and 10 minutes, so that's a lot of songs of the old album. So usually a band, when they go on tour, when an album is just out, they promote the new songs. But this is almost a promotion for the old album.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with this band,
there are no rules.
Yeah, and we don't do the whole promo sort of thing as well. You know, I've said on a couple of occasions here, it's like, okay, so we need, we're obviously here trying to sell an album, but so here's a track off that, you know. But it's cheesy, you know. And we grew up in punk rock bands. And even Michelle Voivod had this kind of punk rock mentality, which was, it's kind of embarrassing to do things that are too arranged,
too commercial.
Yeah.
The commercial is the bad word.
Well,
but hey, you guys did a video. I saw that there were 2 videos for this new album.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his promotion.
Yeah.
Was that a big step for you guys to take?
Well, the difficulty obviously is you can't do a live video with a band. So we're trying to think about how to do that. So I had
why couldn't you do a live video? Because you didn't play live. Well,
because we're in 3 different countries.
Yeah, but you had Roadburn. You didn't have usable recordings from
Roadburn? No, we didn't. No,
okay.
No. So with this album here, so we did Killing the King and Deep State, and this Jacob Moth did the videos for that. And I said to my wife, because she's in art college, I said, let's get a video camera. We'll go up on the mountain behind, and I'll dress up as 2 different characters. And so she took this video footage, So it's all stuff that you can do yourself, and then edit it down. And then we had the guys in the States, and Andy said, okay, everybody, when you film at your own house, make sure you've got the light coming from the right hand side or whatever. So it's exactly the same thing as the album. It's like, work with the resources you have. Everybody's got a camera nowadays. Yep. Knit the thing together and make it seem like a cohesive story.
Well, it looked cohesive, although it's the images, they made sense somehow.
Sure. Yeah.
But, okay, so there will be any future videos then?
I think we should. Yeah, it'd be really good to be able to do one as a band all together. It'd be great,
Well, one question I had was the future plans are, but so this is a big future plan. Bring the guys together somehow to let this chemistry going.
I think that's the best idea, is to see if we can all get 2 or 3 weeks to work together.
But this means 6 agendas. Mixing together somehow.
Yeah, and it's expensive.
For the guys to get over to Sky. And it's another way expensive, because when you don't work, you don't have income.
Yep, and most of us, myself and Andy, I'm self-employed. So is Andy. So it's not only that you don't have income, but it's like it costs you. Yeah, because nothing's
I'm self-employed as well.
There you go. Your holidays are an indulgence, aren't they?
Yep. They are extra pricey. You pay for the plane ticket, and you don't earn the money.
And you lose the money. Yeah.
So But how do you do that? How do you combine that? Your blacksmith job and your singer job?
Well, the singer job is not really a job. Blacksmithing or bladesmithing, making swords, is my day-to-day. And that pays the bills and all the rest of it.
No.
Being involved with music these days is an absolute indulgence, because when I grew up, even in an unknown sort of punk band, if you released an album, you'd sell 5,000 the first week. That was the way it was, records, because there were so few bands, and if you were even slightly interesting, you'd sell a shitload of stuff.
Yeah, but that's still not enough to live from.
No, it's not. It's true. It's not. I don't actually think I'd like to be trying to make a living from music.
No, this was wondering, in case Pillar of Fire sells, 100,000 copies, I don't know how much you have to sell to make a living of it.
Yeah.
What would you prefer? Would you give up your blacksmith?
No, I don't think that would. I don't think it would work, for the reason that if you had to repeat going around selling your music all the time, I think there's an attrition there. I think that you lose contact with what it means, and the whole creative spark that's there, and it'll just become a job.
Yeah.
And I learned that through being a swordsmith. When I first got involved with it, I was interested in the psychological and the mythological side of this, against Arthurian mythos and the symbol of the sword as this living psychological archetype and all the rest of it, and I was really involved in that side of it. So for me, it was a practice of magic in a very real sense. This bringing together of all the four elements: the fire and the water and the earth and the air, which is in there within my work. So I was fully absorbed by that and in that whole magical mode. And the similar thing is when you're in music and you're still fascinated by what you've done or what you're making. You have all that enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is enthusiasmos, which is Greek, which means to be full of God, which is
okay. At that moment you're full of God. You have that feeling when you're on stage, and you have that feeling when you finish a sword or a start.
You should have. That's the ideal thing, and I think if you try to push and make a living out of something, that can wear down a bit. So with this, I guess what I'm saying with the sword making, I love what I do, but it's my job now.
Yeah. When
I started, it was my absolute passion, and if you have to do something for work, it becomes a job.
It's just me, I'm doing acapella tonight. John, he's the guy down the front going, more. We rehearsed another one, so we've got one more song for you anyway, so let's try and get into this one.
Thank you.
What we're trying to do now is, it's been very fast. What's happened has been a little bit too fast in some ways, because all of a sudden we did 2 albums. It's like, shit, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And for me, it seems like it just appeared. So now we're proposing to actually take a big breath and sit down and then see what we've done, because you can't really be objective about your own work when you're right that close to it all the time. So you need to stand back and say, okay, what have we got here? What's strong about this? How can we develop this? What do we have thematically, without being too self-conscious about it? You say, what's the strong points? Let's keep going. So the next thing will be some time out, some real consideration about the way we move next into into new recordings and really taken things deeper.
Okay, sounds interesting. Curious what the next chapter will be, because well, it's obviously progress between chapter 1 and chapter 2. So
Yeah.
wherever chapter 3 leads, a Tau cross with chemistry.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yep. The alchemical mission.
Yeah. Okay, well, drink to that, shake hands to that.
Very good.
Thanks for this interview, and good luck tonight on stage.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mister, tell me when I die, where will I go? One hand pointed up above, and one hand down below. Is this the only choice we have? It's all we've ever known. And we're working hard to keep our love alive. Yeah, we're working hard to keep our blood alive. Down here. He looked into my eyes and said, something you should hear. The choices that we offer you are not as they appear. For us it's all a game, you see, so let me make it clear. And we'll offer you confusion when you're searching for the truth. We will tempt you with illusion that prevailed as living proof. We understand the way you work, so let me make it clear. We are masters of the vision, we are princes of deceit. You will learn to love your prison, too terrified to leave. Kneel before the king of terror, let me whisper in your ear.
Let's drive this motherfucker.
Yeah, let's go. Straight to Vegas.
25 miles to Vegas. That way.
you.